How are you doing? Good. Yeah. 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 Okay. Okay.
Okay, we ready?
I'm good. Long time no see. You ready to go?
Well, the subcommittee will come to order. Good afternoon. I want to welcome to the subcommittee to witnesses Mr. Almanza, Deputy Undersecretary for Food Safety and with the Food Safety and Inspection Service, and have back Mr. Michael Young, USDA's Budget Director. Thank you both for being here. Today we'll focus on the FY17 budget request of the Food Safety Inspection Service, which totals approximately $1 billion. USDA's FSIS works to ensure that our nation's supply of meat, poultry, processed eggs, and catfish are safe, they're wholesome, they're correctly packaged, and they're labeled. In FY15, FSIS conducted 6.9 million food safety and food defense procedures and more than 173,000 humane handling verification procedures. FSIS is comprised of more than 9,400 employees and regulates nearly 6,400 establishments across the United States. Approximately 80% of FSIS budget is for personnel salaries and benefits. The agency appears to have used these personnel funds in order for FSIS to reduce the frontline occupation vacancy rates to a low 4.15%. One of our goals this year in this subcommittee is to ensure that agencies within our jurisdiction are increasing their efficiency in generating effective outcomes. The work FSIS has done to mobilize the poultry inspection system fits right into that goal. The new system helps frontline inspectors be more efficient and focused on vital science-based activities in their daily activities, which leads to improved food safety and also to fewer illnesses. The modernized inspection system has been thoroughly reviewed and it's been analyzed, and the results show a reduction in foodborne illnesses. Secretary Vilsack has been a strong supporter of this, and when he testified before the subcommittee 2 weeks ago, he mentioned that how modernization can also yield positive results for pork inspection as well. And I look forward to us discussing that more in detail as we move forward. Another area of great interest is USDA's Catfish inspection program. I'm pleased that the final rule establishing the program was published on December the 2nd. It took a little longer than expected for the final rule to be issued, but nonetheless, catfish inspection has now been implemented at FSIS. Also look forward to getting an update on how this process is moving forward as well. America is really blessed to have a safe food supply, safest in the world, and our goal here is to keep it that way, as I know it is your goal as well. I'm certain that we will discuss new standards that FSIS is implementing to prevent salmonella contamination that's in poultry and improve the agency's ability to determine the source of foodborne illnesses linked to ground beef. No one questions the valuable work that is carried out by your department and your personnel on a day-to-day basis. Mr. Almanza, you started as an inspector, so you know firsthand the importance of what your agency does on a day-to-day basis as well. FSIS inspectors are on the front line to protect public health and to maintain food supply, a safe food supply that we as consumers sometimes take for granted, or maybe quite often take for granted. I appreciate the work of all the employees at your agency and who strive to keep meat, poultry, egg products available and safe for consumers. On a personal note, the district I represent produces and processes quite a bit of poultry. The people from the 4th District of Alabama and many other members across the country take pride in delivering a safe and nutritious product to consumers in the United States and across the world. So again, thank you for being our witness here this afternoon, and I look forward to today's hearing as we move forward. And before I recognize Mr. Farr, I would like to take a moment to recognize someone that's here from FSIS who's been attending who is attending his last hearing of this subcommittee in his current job, because he is retiring on April 1st after 35 years of public service. And his name is Phil Derfler. And so he is the Deputy Administrator, for those of you who may not know, at FSIS, and it's his position that he has held since 2011. He has testified before this subcommittee on several occasions. Prior to that, he served 11 years as Assistant Administrator of FSIS Office of Policy and Program Development, where he was very influential in the development of numerous landmark policies and programs that have been instrumental in reducing the number of foodborne illnesses. Before joining FSIS, Mr. Derfler was a senior attorney at the Food and Drug Administration, where he handled legal matters involving foods. He has an in-depth knowledge of food safety that few will ever attain, and has dedicated his entire career to protecting public health. So within FSIS, he is often everyone's first phone call whenever a question arises when it comes to food safety. So his expertise and precise approach to his work will be sorely missed within the USDA and also at FSIS as well. I want to congratulate him on a successful career and certainly wish you the best on your retirement. At this time, Mr. Farr, we'll recognize you for any comments that you may have.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations, Mr. Effler. We've had Secretary Vilsack here, who has to retire. He's being forced out. And the Administrator Connon this morning, and now you're the first person that's voluntarily leaving after 35 years of service. I'm leaving at the end of this year also, so I'll have to come and take retirement lessons from you. But congratulations on all those good years of public service. I'm always interested in this agency because it's sort of zeroes in on just sort of a limited jurisdiction, but an awful lot of different important things, particularly food safety and the network of it. And it's also an area that I think is so exciting as we develop all these new technical tools to be able to detect. I mean, sort of like the MRIs of living human beings to detect things in our bodies, that you're going to be able to use technology to also detect diseases and illnesses and things that'll help. Antibiotic resistance is one of the biggest medical challenges of our time, and I think only bringing the human, the animal, and the environmental science together can we find solutions. And it really calls for a kind of a One Health approach. And I commend USDA and FSIS for working not only in their agency and in the silo that you're in, but working with the FDA and working with CDC on a coordinated response. I hope you'll give us more about this new initiative. I'm glad that the position of the Humane Handling Enforcement Coordinator has finally been filled, and over the past few years there have been well-publicized reports of serious welfare violations in some of our slaughter plants. There are also welfare concerns for poultry and hogs in the new and proposed slaughter modernization rules, and I hope that the new appointment is a sign that FSIS is continuing to take animal welfare very seriously. And I especially appreciate the outreach and any help to the smaller establishments as they try to modernize, and to small local establishments, which I think are very needed in rural areas to help producers thrive. But there's also need for extra help to fulfill safety and human handling requirements in those smaller operations, and I look forward to your commitment to that. So, Mr. Chairman, I have no further comments, and
Okay. Well, thank you. I'd like to now recognize you, Mr. Almanza, for your opening statement. Of course, without objection, your written testimony will be entered in the record, but we now recognize you for any comments that you'd like to make before we go into the questioning portion of the hearing.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Farr, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the status of the agency's programs and policies. I'm pleased to appear before you today in support of the President's fiscal year 2017 budget request for FSIS. With the requested funding level, I am confident that FSIS will maintain effectiveness in its core mission of preventing foodborne illness. Before I get into the budget request, let me take a moment to thank Representatives Valadeo and DeLauro for joining FSIS on plant tours. I'd also like to extend the invitation to any members or staff to join a tour in the future. A plant tour is really the best way to see what our inspectors on the line are doing on a daily basis to protect the public's health. Foodborne illness is a significant public health problem that affects 1 in 6 Americans and results in 3,000 deaths every year. The highest priority of FSIS is to prevent as many of those illnesses as we possibly can. The USDA mark of inspection is an important part of the confidence that American consumers have in the safety of their food supply. With Congress's support, we have begun to modernize how we do inspection. Our modernization efforts will lead to fewer illnesses from meat, poultry, and egg products. We recently updated our 60-year-old poultry safety system by implementing the final rule that requires plants to do testing at 2 points in the slaughter line to verify process control. In addition, the rule requires plants to treat Salmonella and Campylobacter as hazards that are reasonably likely to occur, and it makes available the new poultry inspection system to plants throughout the country. Earlier this month, we finalized the first ever pathogen reduction standards for chicken parts, which make up 80% of the chicken that Americans consume. These new standards, along with our new standards for comminuted poultry, could help prevent an estimated 50,000 foodborne illnesses. We are also laying the groundwork for continued modernization in the years ahead as we develop our new 5-year strategic plan. Building on the theme of modernization, the agency is asking for funding to strengthen our use of science. We are seeking to expand our use of whole genome sequencing technology, which will provide FSIS with a much better understanding of what it means when we find pathogens in the products that we test. It will also greatly improve the accuracy of the conclusions we reach based on our foodborne illness investigations. FSIS is asking for an increase in our budget to expand lab analysis, whole genome sequencing, and testing. A key part of our agency's food safety efforts is sampling and analysis for pathogens, adulterants, and contamination. Our analysis shows that the agency's sampling encourages establishments to improve the effectiveness of their food safety systems. I began my career in 1978 as a slaughter inspector in Dalhart, Texas. One of the most significant changes I've seen in my time with FSIS has been the shift from paper records to the Public Health Information System, or PHIS, which allows the agency to collect and store inspection data in one central location. The challenge now is to use this data to identify trends, connect the dots, and make meaningful improvements to public health. This is why the agency is requesting a funding increase for advanced data analytics. This technology presents an important opportunity to further our efforts to fulfill our food safety mission by using analysis to identify trends in our data and modify our decision-making to respond to those trends. The dedicated men and women of FSIS are on the front lines nationwide performing inspection procedures that are based on the best available scientific evidence. FSIS will always prioritize in-plant food safety inspection. We must ensure that the procedures and tasks that our inspection personnel perform are up to date, meaningful, and targeted at threats to public health. Having led this agency for 9 years, I can tell you with confidence that the men and women who show up for work every day do so determined to ensure that we have the safest food supply in the world. Because of this, millions of Americans are able to sit down at the table to enjoy safe, wholesome meals every day. Thank you for your continued support for our vital work as a public health agency, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you again for your testimony, and we'll go right into questions. I mentioned in my opening statement, I was pleased to see the final rule establishing the program for domestic inspection of catfish has been published. Federal inspection of catfish is set to begin next week, which will be next Tuesday, March 1st. And it might help us if we have a better understanding of exactly which operations will require an FSIS inspector to carry out their daily activities compared to those that don't need to operate under a continuous inspection. So start out with, can you tell us the difference between slaughter facilities and the processing facilities that don't need a daily inspector?
Okay, so the slaughter facilities, and it's kind of odd to call slaughtering a catfish, harvesting catfish, I guess. They will have, there are about, I'd say about 16 slaughter facilities that will have an inspector present during entire operation. So they will be there the entire time that catfish are being slaughtered and processed. For the other facilities that are only processing catfish, it will be similar to what we have in our current patrol assignment. So they will be visiting those plants at least daily and will have a presence, but will have to be on duty so that they will be available to...
But not continuously on site?
Not necessarily on site, but they will be available to be there daily.
How many catfish harvesting slaughter plants are signed up and will need to have this inspector to operate?
About 16 slaughter facilities.
And with the new program going into effect next week, what does it mean for our trading partners seeking to export catfish to the United States?
Well, what we're going to do is we'll start testing catfish as it comes into the country. Basically, that's what it means during the interim phase-in period for when we eventually have inspection and have equivalency for those other countries that are willing to export to the United States.
Well, as trade negotiations continue, we certainly want to ensure that food safety remains firmly in place. To your knowledge, have any of the requirements on catfish inspection in the 2014 Farm Bill altered any of the ways during the ongoing trade negotiation thus far?
Not that I'm aware of. We have been, in fact, a couple of weeks ago, I went to Beijing to visit with the Chinese officials. I went to Hanoi to visit with the Vietnamese officials, and then went to Burma to visit with their country's officials about their getting up to speed with our equivalency process.
Thanks. And I think everyone in the room realizes that we do have the safest food supply in the world, and certainly we don't want to jeopardize that. You and the Secretary have been strong supporters of the new poultry inspection system. Your testimony states that 51 plants have shown an interest in operating under this new inspection program. Is it fair to assume that the number of plants participating in the new system will grow over time?
Yes, sir. In fact, this morning I had one of the corporations come in and express an interest in their whole corporate system opting in to NPIS.
As this system is implemented in more poultry plants, do you believe what do you think will be the top benefits to consumers?
Well, top benefits is that it's mandatory testing. We've never had mandatory testing, which provides a layer of support for consumers. When we have mandatory testing in all the plants, whether they opted in or not, are required to test. And I'd say a benefit of significantly less foodborne illnesses associated with these products as well.
Okay. Mr. Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Find all my questions here. Your budget is $15 million over the 2016 enacted. That's, and the whole budget is just a little over $1 billion.
Yes, sir.
So on the new initiatives, one of the concerns that I had is that food safety, there's a requirement that a regulated establishment have a proactive food safety asset plan. And currently, the agency only has a recommendation that there be a proactive humane handling approach. And as I understand it, in 2015, 69% of the plants assessed had this proactive welfare approach in place. The target for next year is 75%. This still seems kind of low. I mean, if you're in this business, shouldn't you all be upgrading to that plan, have that plan in place, and be held accountable for it? What would it take to reach 100% of the slaughter establishments having such a plan?
Yeah, I think that it's kind of misleading in a way that some of the bigger corporations have better a better grip on how to have these effective measures in place versus the smaller plants. They simply don't have the technical capacity. They don't have people that are working there that are experts in those areas. And so it's a challenge for us, but
Does it require all of that? I mean, you've been in the business. There's obviously big sort of machine manufacturing, and then there's small operations.
does it take all that? I would say that you would have to have resources available to understand what some of the leaders in the industry understand as being these practices.
Do you help those smaller understand how they can get access, like SBA loans and things like that?
What we do is we have a small plant help desk that we will refer people that will help them, and in some cases for nothing.
Because I'm not very close to all this, but I have a lot of, the organic movement is just moving tremendously. In fact, we had the small business administrator out, and all she looked at was this big commercial kitchen we built with SBA loans to allow people to come in with their, to have a license, inspected and everything up to code standards, to do a lot of catering stuff and new products on it. I was amazed because everything in there was all this new foodie stuff. And what's happening in the meat area, and you know this better than I do, is a lot of the rural areas, particularly ranchers who were part of the old ranches in California, who always had grazed all their beef there. They don't put them to feeder feedlots, and they want to market their cattle as organic, grass-fed beef. Yet the process for going to slaughter and keeping the identity of that animal and getting it all the way back, it's huge transportation costs. So they're trying to build these smaller ones. And I'm very interested in that. And I just say if there is ways that the department could help those things get established, because I know that there's a lot of safety requirements that are expensive, and some of these have just gone out of business because they're too onerous for them. But is there an opportunity for small slaughter operations to really get into business now that there's a greater demand for local beef, organic beef, and things like that?
We haven't really seen a large number or an increase. What we have seen is some of these mobile slaughter units being activated.
Yeah, well, I got one of those, but it was just not cost effective. I think it can only hang 4 or 5 carcasses, and so you're tying it up for, while those are hanging for the number of days that I have to do it. You raise the issue of the performance-based user fees. I'm curious, but also concerned. What kind of other entities pay these? I know restaurants pay a fee and for the environmental health inspector to come in and inspect them, and sort of pays for that service. But it seems here you want user fees to be based on whether there's a recall and things like that. Would you explain how this is going to be equitable?
What that's talking about is if there is an additional cost as a result of a recall or some significant food safety type issue, that additional cost that is incurred by the agency would then be recovered.
Well, what's fair about that? It's sort of like saying if your house catches on fire, we're going to charge you when the firemen show up. I mean, isn't that the job of government to do that inspection? I think it was a generalized fee that you pay in for inspection services.
Well, they don't pay
but
anything.
Not just, they don't pay anything now?
It's 8 hours of free inspection every day. And if they have 2 shifts, they get 16 hours of free inspection. The only time we charge them is if they work over 8 hours a day or if they work on weekends or holidays.
So this fee, though, is more a fee based on penalties for recall.
It would be if it was something that was significant to public health that would result in a recall. Yes, that's what we were looking at for those types of fees.
Mr. Yoder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Almanza, welcome to the committee. Mr. Young, welcome back to the committee again. It's great to have you gentlemen today. I wanted to ask you about where we are in terms of cool labeling in the face of what's changed over the last year. When you were before the committee last year, I asked you about this, and I think your statement at the time was, as far as FSIS goes, we really have limited responsibility over cool, other than some of the requirements for labeling that would fall underneath you. Well, the world has changed since then. I noted that in December, the FSIS instructed inspection personnel that they are developing guidance for federally inspected establishments related to geographic claims they may wish to make on beef and pork muscle cuts and ground products, with the cool regulations no longer being enforced. So I guess, can you inform the subcommittee about where FSIS is currently in establishing voluntary guidelines for cool referenced in that December 21st, 2015 notice, even though Congress has already taken clear action on the issue? What's FSIS doing, and what can you tell us?
So as a result of that, what we've done is we've started to monitor all the data that we're getting in, all the requests for labels, because we don't know the volume of the entirety of the problem or of the issue, really. So we're gonna analyze the requests for labels that are coming in with these types of claims, and then we'll see if it's necessary to do some type of guidance or something else as a result of that.
And what would be the factors that would go into that, in terms of how many entities are interested in doing that versus what the cost would be to set up those voluntary guidelines? So is it interest versus cost, or how do you make that determination?
I don't, not the cost. It's basically, what is the universe? Is it 500 a year, or is it 5,000 a year? Is it natural claims? Is it organic claims? And so those all take different ways of in the labeling world of handling. So we just have to take a look at what's coming in, see what it looks like after about 6 to 8 months, and then we'll determine which way to go.
So your timeline is 6 to 8 months from now?
No, from December.
From when?
December. So
From December, okay. So sometime in the middle of this year, you'll have an idea of whether you're going to move forward with that and can keep us apprised of that. Okay, thank you. In your testimony, you mentioned the new poultry inspection system.
Sure.
And that your agency was considering taking a similar approach to hog inspection based on the hazard analysis and critical control point based inspection models program. USDA recently received a letter from a number of members of Congress about the administration's pork inspection modernization efforts. Specifically, the letter asked about the model's ability to address food safety, animal welfare, and worker safety. So my questions are, can you take a moment to share your views about the USDA's hazard analyst and critical control point based inspection models project? It's a mouthful.
Hazard is easier.
Yeah, hazard. Okay, thank you. And could you talk about other modernization efforts underway at FSIS and the future, what that has in store?
Okay, so with the pork hemp plants, we currently have 5. We're taking a look at the data. We're analyzing the data. So we've started laying the groundwork for moving forward on a proposed rule. But obviously, we need the risk analysis to be done, and we want to make sure that all the things you mentioned, food safety, public health, humane handling, all those things are taken into consideration before we issue a proposed rule. So, like I said, we're still laying the groundwork for it. Hopefully, we can get that done, but we really don't have a what I would say a concrete timeline.
What other modernization efforts are underway at FSIS?
Well, that's a good question, actually, because since I got to the administrator's job, modernization has really been the theme, because I feel this way. I feel that as long as we continue to modernize, as long as we continue to move, I think NPIS was a good example, but all the data that we're getting, with y'all's support, our new public health information system, all the data that we're getting from that, we need to analyze that data and see that what we're doing is being effective for public health. We're doing millions of tasks every single year. What does that mean? And are there tasks that we can glean some food safety types of initiatives from, or are there some that we need to drop off? But as long as we continue to modernize internally, I feel that it gives you all the ability to support us in what we do in keeping Americans food safe.
Well, it certainly is an investment that would pay off, and so we appreciate your efforts to move in that direction, and hopefully we'll see some great results. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Almanza, for being here today and for the work that you do. I appreciate it. The ranking member brought up one of the issues I'm interested in talking to you about, and that is this concern about insufficient small slaughter facilities in the country. And I do think the need has grown. It's one of the most common things we hear talked about when we're visiting communities where small farmers have had a resurgence, or ranking member mentioned organic processing needs. It seems to be a big demand, and I know in my home state people are attempting to bring back USDA inspected facilities that wouldn't have the size of some of the big production plants that we often talk to you about. And I've been able to talk with people around the country about some of the small plants that are coming back online. So I want to just throw out 2 or 3 questions and let you talk about it. I mean, first, I'm interested in anything that FSIS can do to help deal with sort of the bottleneck that it gets in the way sometimes, I think, of these processing facilities coming online to deal more with the demand for locally grown or regionally produced food. I know the USDA has the Know Your Food, Know Your Farmer initiative that really encourages that, and do you tie into that at all? Or, you know, I know you have a lot of other responsibilities, but this is both a growing need, but it's also a big economic opportunity for farmers. You know, there's the chance to have a big farm and sell to a slaughterhouse, but I think for many farmers they've found that selling fewer animals but having them locally grown and locally processed gives them an opportunity to get a better price, sell direct to consumer. There's just a variety of advantages there. Generally, I know in my state and other states that the hitch tends to be when you want to broaden your reach and you can't just use a state-regulated facility, and you need to get into the USDA range. So in that vein, some of the concerns that I've heard talked about in those facilities that are coming online is insufficient numbers of USDA inspectors or a lack of familiarity with the processing procedures that will happen in a smaller plant when you're comparing that to, a lot of people are trained to deal with the highly mechanized processing that we have today, and I know you'll probably get some questions about some of the challenges with that. But on the other side, it's different when you're not just watching a line where everything, pops by you in, half-second increments, but you got to deal with a different kind of facility. And so what I've been hearing is that there's not enough training provided, or there aren't enough inspectors available for these facilities that, as you mentioned, have to have somebody in there all the time, or there's some lack of familiarity in a sense, kind of the old way of doing it, or, some of the things that need to be done. So that's a big, broad question, but I see this as a big need, and I see us moving forward in that direction, which is good, but some challenges in really accomplishing it, and some of the bottleneck has to do with the department.
Okay. Yes, we are part of Know Your Food, Know Your Farmer. Anybody that works for Secretary Vilsack knows they have to be a part of it. But I would say this. We do have places in the country that are more difficult to fill than others. We typically see higher vacancy rates in some parts and others. What we're doing is we're trying to work on incentives, paying for college tuition, paying for some of the student debt for some of our veterinarians. We're looking at offering college courses to some of our food inspectors with the hook that they will go to some of these locations and stay there a minimum of 2 or 3 years. So we are thinking about that. It does fluctuate somewhat because there are some areas that for some reason or another we have trouble hiring for, but we are looking at it, and we're trying to do the best that we can. I would say if there is a specific location where there isn't, or there aren't inspectors available, we need to know about that, because we try to keep an eye on that as much as we can as well in some other parts of the country. As we start to transition in some of these plants that have opted into the new poultry inspection system, putting some of those inspectors in other locations. And so there's opportunities to move people, but we believe that those incentives that we're creating will create opportunities for people to want to move to some of these locations with some of these incentives.
Great. Well, I hope I will try to see if I can give you some specific examples, maybe offline. But I do hope you'll consider that as an important move. I mean, I know the volume that gets processed today really is happening in bigger facilities, but in the end, I think some of the economic opportunities, and while the USDA's mission has had to shift a little bit as the world has changed, if we can't count on the USDA to be there to kind of like meet the needs of the most rural places in our country, I don't know where else we turn, and I do see it still as a vital part of your mission. So I'll try to give you a few of those examples, but I still think that there's a gap that has to be bridged here between what the opportunities are now and what you have available. And I know you operate under financial constraints, but on the other hand, anybody who wants to be doing this is required to have a USDA inspector, so they're kind of they're stuck without your assistance. So thanks for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me ask a little bit, follow up a little bit on some of the poultry inspection questions, because I guess, in 2012, FSIS proposed a rule to modernize the poultry slaughter inspection. Part of that rule was a proposal to increase the line speed to 175 birds per minute. But when the final rule came out, it didn't include a line speed increase, even though there was indication in the report that the line speeds, that there was effective inspection even at the higher line speed. So the way I read this, I mean, there were plants that might have been operating at the higher line speed for years under the proposal that then had to reduce their line speed with the final rule?
No, they maintain their line speeds.
But no other plants could increase the line speed, is that?
That's correct.
Okay, now, so why did you feel that that couldn't be expanded, the increased line speed to other plants that might want to, you know, have a faster line speed?
Because through the proposed rule, the comments that we got and the responses that we gave as a result of engaging in the rule process, we felt that we couldn't support the 175 for new plants.
Comments from whom?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how many comments we got, but they were certainly thousands.
Okay, but in the final rule, the agency stated, and I'm going to quote, "The agency's experience under hemp shows that the inspectors in hemp establishments are able to conduct an effective online inspection when operating under the line speeds authorized under hemp." So I don't understand. If you found that you could conduct these, I mean, why would it be good for some and not for others? It seems kind of arbitrary, you know, that you say, okay, well, if you've been in the program till now, you can do it, but nobody else. You know, even if you build a ultra-modern plant, you know, with all the other bells and whistles, it just seems a little interesting that you would make a distinction that some plants can and some plants can't, and no new plant can qualify, I take it. Somebody builds a brand new plant, ultra-modern, you know, inspection methods, don't qualify for the new line speed under the new rule. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Let's talk about issued notice 1016 earlier this month that allows inspectors to reduce the speed for what could be, some people feel, potentially arbitrary reasons that might have existed before. So if you can just do it, why this new notice that says that you can slow, you know, that the inspectors can slow the speed. But interestingly enough, if you adopt the notice suggests that line speed reductions would be less likely in establishments operating under the new poultry inspection system.
Right.
Could you let me know why you thought that we need this new notice that you can reduce line speeds?
So over time, what has happened is some of these establishments have started slaughtering bigger and bigger birds.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And so what was common 3 or 4 years ago was a small bird probably dressing out about 6 pounds, and now it's about 8 pounds. And what's happening is our inspectors do not have the ability to effectively inspect those birds because you have the what they call the fat flap on the inside, and they're not able to do that at those line speeds, even at 35 birds per minute, because those birds are so big. And so so they're not able to see inside and look at
But that's not an issue under the new poultry inspection system. Again, the rule kind of suggests that if you're under the new poultry inspection system, you know, maybe we won't slow down your, we won't slow down your line speeds.
Because under the new poultry inspection system, we have sorters that are basically the company sorters that sort all the defects out, and we have an inspector at the end of the line that basically is making sure that all those things are done. So they do no hand manipulations with the carcasses.
So let me summarize your testimony up till now. If you do this new inspection system and maybe even build a brand new plant, you just won't get your line speed decreased, but you won't be allowed to increase the line speed to where other plants exist, whether or not they've gone to the new poultry inspection system.
We only have 20 plants that are running at 175 under the old.
Out of how many, if I might ask?
How many total
Poultry plants do you
poultry
inspect?
slaughter plants? I don't know right off the top of my head, but I can get that number to you.
Okay, but I suspect that's a minority, a
Yes.
small minority of plants. Okay, I yield back.
Mr. Bishop.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Mr. Almanza and Mr. Young. Going back to the new rule and the new line speeds, basically, the plants that are utilizing the accelerated speed, the 175, those were part of a pilot program, were they not?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And when you got ready to implement the rule and you published it, you got a lot of comments, and from consumer groups and from poultry workers and organizations questioning whether or not it would be safe for workers, and also questioning whether or not it would allow for sufficient inspection. And I assume that that was a great volume of information and input that you got on that. Is that not correct?
Yes.
And that's the reason why you actually decided not, although the Secretary wanted to, and the Secretary was proposing increasing the speed, in the end, you decided not to, the agency decided not to do it because of the feedback that it got in the regulatory public hearing process, comment process. You and I have had an ongoing dialogue on the agency's role in plant safety and how we can better support and protect the workers while maintaining the highest standards of safety. And part of the challenge here is that officially most of the plants have an excellent safety record. At least anecdotally, though, we continue to hear from workers that continue to be serious issues in the area of worker safety. And I've personally met with senior management of some of our largest chicken processors, and I sincerely believe that they're making employee safety one of their highest priorities, but still there are rumors that persist. Can you update us on the current role of our plant inspectors play, the role that our inspectors play with respect to safety, and whether or not there's an interagency agreement with the Department of Labor's OSHA with respect to FSIS inspectors reporting plant safety violations and how those violations are to be treated and processed. And also, can you tell me what kind of training will be made available to the inspectors in this area if there is an interagency agreement, and whether or not your agency has discussed this process and sought the input of both industry and labor representatives?
Yes, and that is significant to the rule because before the rule, we, FSIS, had never had any process for identifying hazards for plant employees. Basically, our inspectors aren't safety inspectors. They're not any type of safety experts. So we had never had our inspection personnel do anything regarding company employees. But as a result of this rule, what we did was we established an 800 number, and obviously, we signed an MOU with Department of Labor.
So you do have an agreement?
Yes. And what we did was we issued a poster to be posted in all the poultry facilities, and this is whether they opted into NPIS or not. This is all the poultry establishments, and so they all have these posters in there. They all have the 800 number posted in there where employees can call, but more importantly, where our inspectors can call if they observe what they believe to be some type of hazard that is not only a hazard, because before it was just to our employees, but if it's a hazard to where they determine that it'd be a hazard to one of their company employees, then they can call this 800 number and report it as well.
So they report hazards to themselves or to their own to your employees, but also hazards, they're obligated to report hazards to the plant workers for the...
They call that 800 number, which is an OSHA number, right?
Is it mandatory for the inspectors under the MOU to do that?
What it instructs the inspectors that if they are to observe any type of hazard to company employees, that they are to call this number.
All right. Currently, FSIS has over 1,700 state-inspected establishments under nearly 24 meat and poultry inspection programs through a cost sharing of up to 50% of allowable state costs. What kinds of resources do you provide the states that are participating in the program other than the sharing of costs? Specifically, what kinds of training activities does FSIS provide, especially in terms of industry best practices, and what is the role of industry at the state level in this process? And how many of the most recent incidences of Salmonella or E. coli originated in a state-inspected establishment versus a federally inspected facility?
The numbers for the state versus federal, I will have to get those to you. I'll submit those for the record for you. The other part of your question is we basically afford training of all types for state employees. If it's regulatory type training and in those types that keep them equivalent to us, we provide them that type of training. All they have to do is ask for it.
Thank you. I think my time is up.
Mr. Valdez.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Almanza, nice to see you. Most of my questions were actually already asked by Dr. Harris, so I appreciate the line of questioning and have the same concerns. But one question that I am interested in is the recent agreement on TPP seems to have broad support, a lot of support. I'd say, yeah, pretty broad support from the meat industry. And I'm optimistic that it will be beneficial to many industries and a positive step for the United States in international trade. Currently, in order to qualify for import into the United States, foreign countries have to demonstrate that their laws, regulations, and standards are equivalent to the U.S. standards administered by FSIS. Still, there have many instances where foreign meat recalls, or we've had some in the past few years. With the increase in imports as a result of TPP, what is being done to prepare for this increase and ensure proper communication and collaboration between the Public Health Information System, PHIS, USDA, and Customs and Border Protection to protect the industries and, obviously, most importantly, public health?
Right. So one of the things that we're doing with the ITDS is that's basically the system that we're working with CBP, Customs and Border Protection on, is for them to be able to see when these products meat products are coming into the country, that they identify them and segregate them for FSIS reinspection. Now, there are only 32 countries that are eligible to export to the United States, so that's something that it's a pretty high bar for them to be able to export to the United States, and we take that very seriously. But we continue to work with PHIS and the ITDS systems to merge. In fact, just this last weekend, I was down in Laredo, Texas, and we were talking to some of the custom brokers about how our system, the FSIS ITDS system, is working quite well compared to other products, because they feel that we're significantly ahead. Now, are there hiccups? Yes, there are, but there are a lot of software companies that are just jumping into the fray to try to mitigate some of the issues between the two systems to make them work and make it easier for importers to be able to make that system better.
How much verification is there on our part here in the U.S. to make sure that our trading partners are doing their job? Do we have folks on the ground in those countries? How often are they there? I mean, what's the process there?
It depends on their compliance history. So for some countries, we're there a lot more frequently than others. It depends on what the issues are that we find with the products that are coming into the United States. Basically, we do 100% reinspection. Now, that doesn't mean we look at every single carton or container that's coming in, but we do some type of inspection, be it a visual inspection of the container. Sometimes we take samples. Sometimes we do different type of testing of the different products that we receive. It just depends on the products that they're exporting.
All right. Now, as a farmer myself, and spent some time on issues like this, and always concerned with product coming in and how well it was being treated, inspected to compete with mine, it was always something of concern. And obviously, as a consumer, we want to make sure that the product is safe. So, just curious. But thank you again for your time.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Almanza and Mr. Young. Just a quick question here, which is on salmonella and food recalls. Forbes issued a report entitled 25 Food Recalls So Far This Year, and it looks like plenty more to come. And the culprit in all of this has been salmonella. And I know that there are new standards for Salmonella and Campylobacter on chicken parts, but step in the right direction. But this is, Salmonella is a known disease. It causes bacteria. The new rule allows Salmonella to be present in prospect chicken and turkey products. Just a couple of pieces. Salmonella is regarded as the biggest public health threat that we have. Salmonella kills more Americans every year than E. coli does, and it can cause severe long-term complications. As you know, E. coli 0157 was identified as an adulterant. I asked this of the Secretary, but I want to ask this of you as well. Will you consider declaring antibiotic-resistant Salmonella an adulterant? Would you consider?
Well, we
labeling it as
currently
an
have a petition pending that we're still reviewing for the antibiotic-resistant Salmonella.
What does that mean? You have a petition. What is that? Are you going to, is a petition to regard Salmonella as an adulterant and to label it as such?
That's a petition that basically goes in that direction, yes.
A petition from whom?
CSPI.
Center for the Science and Public Interest. Okay, and what is the time frame on the labeling or the response on this?
I really don't know. I mean, we're reviewing it.
I understand. What is the time frame?
We really don't have a time frame for it.
So we could go on ad nauseum
We really don't have a timeline for
and
for
put
the
people
review
at
process.
risk.
No, well, I would say that all Salmonella is not equal.
I'm not a doctor, I'm not a
I'm not either.
scientist, but I read a hell of a lot of stuff about Salmonella. And I didn't make this up. Salmonella kills more Americans each year than E. coli. Now, we did label E. coli an adulterant, but we have been unable to get to labeling Salmonella as an adulterant. So that the department has no time frame for which it will make a determination about Salmonella.
No, we
Look,
don't.
I know the history of it. Went back, it was proved. We, the government, sided with the industry at the time. I don't have time to go all the way back on this. I would like to get an answer on when we will review and have an answer on this petition. This has been going on for a while, so I anticipate getting an answer to identifying Salmonella as an adulterant. It's impossible that you have no idea that of what the outset. Let's go to the poultry inspection system. Written testimony, you said that on February 18th, there were 51 plants that wanted to shift to NPIS. February 6th, 52 plants wanted to shift. Which is it, and what is the current status of the implementation of NPIS? Is training required of the sorters who are replacing FSIS inspectors on the slaughter lines in these plants?
So it was 52, and one plant didn't have the resources to be able to move forward, so it went back to 51.
So we're 51. Now tell me about the training required of the sorters who are replacing FSIS inspectors.
So there are no sorters replacing FSIS inspectors. FSIS inspectors are at the end of the line.
But we have removed, as far as I go back to the last budget, and I've got to, we're replacing inspectors who were on the line with sorters who are appointed, if you will, by the agent, by the producer, by the establishment, by their employer. So I'm asking, because we had FSIS inspectors on the line. They are no longer on the line, and we have these other people, whatever you want to call them. I don't know what you want to call them. But who is training them? Are they trained? Who conducts the training? And what is USDA's role in that process? And is FSIS evaluating the content of that training?
The company they train their own sorters.
Fox in the hen house.
No,
Excuse the pun.
No, that's not, absolutely not true. That's not true. We have an inspector at the end of the line that he determines whether the process is in control. You visited one of the plants.
I did,
And-
and
and-
I did. I was there, and I watched these stuff go by at 140, 100. They're moving to 175. You got seconds to examine this product. Seconds.
That's right. But our inspectors are trained to be able to determine whether the first bird looks like the last bird. They're able to determine whether anything's wrong with any of those birds. They are experts in being able to determine those things, and they determine whether one is abnormal from normal.
So the inspector on the line, or the sorter, or whatever you want to call him, on the line, trained by the company, right. So when it gets to the end of is then the inspector looking at everything all over again?
The inspector at the end of the line is inspecting every single bird as they go by. That's the USDA inspector, yes.
But Mr. Chairman, I understand. Talk to me about the end of the line is a process. We need to know who is on the line looking at these birds, what their training is, and who's evaluating whether or not they know what they're doing.
Well, because the inspector at the end of the line verifies process control. If those birds are contaminated, then he knows that. So he verifies whether they're doing their job or not.
Mr. Young is...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, welcome. Just one issue. We've talked about a lot of things, and I've missed a lot, so I'm not going to take the chance on double backing on some issues. But I do have a question about, in veterinarians. In May of 2015, the GAO issued a report regarding veterinarian shortages in federal agencies. FSIS was among the USDA agencies named, one of the top, nearest the top. As veterinarians are one of the 4 mission-critical occupations at the FSIS, approximately 30 or 43% of which are eligible to retire in 2018. That is not very far away. That's almost half. According to the GAO report, FSIS has developed a short-term and long-term agency strategy to fill the shortage. Can you talk to us about how these shortages and long-term strategies are going? Because this is very important, especially from the perspective of a state like Iowa, where we're #1 in hogs and #4 in cattle, and up there in poultry as well. And then you have issues such as foot and mouth disease and PEDV, porcine virus, and bird flu. You talked a little bit about this report, the findings, and what are you doing to fill those long-term and short-term veterinarian positions?
Yes, sir. So I spoke earlier about some incentives that we're creating for veterinary medical officers, some tuition reimbursement for some or veterinary candidates that want to come work for us. We're also we just extended an initiative that we have for veterinarians to stay in these hard-to-fill locations, and also some other monetary types of incentives to bring them on board.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
I'm going to go back to Salmonella. Previously, the agency noted that one of the most challenging issues before you is Salmonella contamination. In 2013, FSIS developed the Salmonella Action Plan, which includes more aggressive performance standards in poultry parts. Your testimony states that the performance standards are designed to achieve a 30% reduction in illness from Salmonella, end of quote. Certainly that's an aggressive goal. My question is that 30% a realistic goal?
Yes.
Have you seen results indicate that the new action plan is making a difference in preventing Salmonella illnesses?
Yes, sir. One of the things that we do when we start talking about new performance goals, the industry pays attention, and so quite frankly, even some of the data that we're getting is that they're already making inroads to reducing the numbers to be able to comply with our new Salmonella standards. So yes, absolutely, we believe that the industry will be able to make the adjustments necessary to meet our standards.
Well, that's good to hear. I know that there have been various food safety interventions and technologies developed by the private sector, some of which are very promising in the effort to protect public health. It does make sense, or rather, it doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel and have the government duplicate efforts that are worthy of, have a worthy solution developed in the private sector. How does your agency work with the private sector and determine whether or not a product is worthy of being approved to use in meat, poultry, fish, or egg establishments that are regulated by your department?
How do we work with the industry?
Private sector.
We meet with industry representatives once a month, and we also meet with consumer groups once a month. And they bring issues to us that we discuss openly, and I believe we have a good relationship with both groups. But we do have outreach efforts to try to alert the industry when we're getting ready to issue new standards, when we're getting ready to issue new issuances as well.
So you say you meet once a month with the private sector, and then once you have these meetings, is there a follow-up then after that when they sit down with you and propose new solutions or things that are out there? Then you have someone in your department that follows up with this, I assume?
So normally both groups will send us questions ahead of time before we meet with them, and we answer their questions in person. And then if we have to have some follow-up with them, we do that as well.
Okay. Oh, I want to ensure that FSIS has all the tools that are necessary to protect public health and prevent any kind of foodborne illnesses, of course. That's what our job is. Your budget includes an increase of $8.5 million for modernizing scientific approaches to food safety. Can you tell us more about this request and how the whole genome sequencing, advanced analytics, and the expanded lab analysis will help the agency's mission?
Sure. One of the things that we believe that whole genome sequencing is like the next frontier, to be able to get down to tell us exactly what bug and the DNA to the bug caused the illness in a what we would call a patient that was affected by a foodborne illness. And so getting to that very core level of whole genome sequencing, we believe is going to be significant for us to be able to improve our testing capacity and to be able to be more precise with how we find these illnesses and act in a regulatory capacity.
The administration's budget has a focus across several agencies that work on combating antimicrobial resistance bacteria. Can you elaborate on what your agency's roles may be in this initiative and how much of your budget is currently proposed to be spent on such an initiative?
On antimicrobial resistance, so that's outside of FSIS. Most of that is research that's being done outside of FSIS, but we do pay attention because those are decisions that we don't make lightly. We have to get all the data, all the information before we make decisions regarding those types of issues.
So it is outside of FSIS that the research is done.
Sure.
Mr. Farr?
Mr. Almanza, you've become very good at this job. I just remember when you first came here, you were a little bit more nervous in front of this committee. You're holding your own.
Yeah.
I guess you've gone from looking at carcass abnormalities to caucus admonishments. So you're getting it all today. I'm interested in the food safety issues, also in the modernization of using technology, getting a better bang for the buck. And I know that you can't really do this with just one agency, because you're dealing with antibiotic resistance, and we have a lot of federal agencies that are concerned about that. Could you explain to the committee the importance of FSIS's interagency plan to combat antimicrobial resistance and the whole genome sequencing capability that seems to be the central cog in the plan to modernize food safety? I noticed that in your budget proposal, almost a third of the new budget growth is in that modernization effort. So in layman's terms, why is the whole genome sequencing so important, and how can it streamline food safety and improve attribution of foodborne illnesses?
Yes, sir. So whole genome sequencing is like I said, is kind of like the new frontier. I mean, it's out there as new technology, but it's building the capacity for us to be able to do that we need the funds to do. Because right now, the platforms that we use are not to that extent. They are very scientific, and I would...
You're not the lead agency on that. I mean,
No.
we spent a lot of money on that.
Right, but no, we're not the lead agency on it, but for us to build internal capacity to test genome sequencing testing, we have to have it in our labs. We have 3 labs. We have one in Athens, Georgia, one in St. Louis, and one out in Alameda, California. And so those labs do our testing. So to build that capacity in those labs, that's what we need the funds for.
And how long, I mean, you put this new money in there, what do you expect to get out of it? How far along are you in the application using the whole,
Genome sequencing, we're just in the beginning stages of that.
is there any tools that have come out of that so far that have been applied?
Any tools?
Well, your new procedures or equipment?
No, not yet. I mean, what's happened is we've come up with more questions and answers, and so building that capacity will help us bring that together.
Is any other agency doing the same thing? I mean, I know
yeah,
the
well,
pharmaceutical
CDC.
industry.
CDC, FDA.
Well, I hope you're successful at it. I think it's a very, very exciting area. How will then, when you have the process or equipment available, how is that going to streamline food safety?
Well, we believe that it will help us get to an
For
end
example,
result
all of these poultry
quicker.
inspections that fly by you, will that replace will it be able to place those inspectors?
No, it's just a better characterization of pathogens. So in layman's terms, what that means is it gives you the ability to look at the DNA of those pathogens and be precise in what caused those illnesses. Because as I started to say earlier, all Salmonella is not a human health hazard. Some Salmonella can be present and we can eat it, and it has no human health impact on us.
Neither is all E. coli.
Neither is all E. coli, correct. There are certain strains that are more virulent, and so those are the ones that we need to pay attention to, and we believe that through whole genome sequencing, that gives us the ability to get there quicker.
So how long do you think it's going to take?
That's a good question. I believe that we can, with working with FDA and with CDC, I think that we'll get there quicker and help us with the capacity that we need.
Well, I hope, Mr. Chairman, that we can keep that money in the budget, because I know of the increase, a substantial amount of that increase goes to this effort. Seems like it's in our best interest to invest in that technology. I have no further.
Thank you very much. Let me just follow up a little bit about this line speed issue, because I'm puzzled. Let me just get it. I assume when you were analyzing line speeds that you checked to whether the food at the higher line speed was less safe or less wholesome. And I assume you found that it wasn't less safe or less wholesome at the higher line speeds. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you kind of looked at it scientifically. And the science said, because you studied it, said this is not less safe, it is not less wholesome. Now, do you know what your website says the goal, the mission of your agency is actually? That it's science-based inspection systems? You know you say that, right? And you're proud of that. I'm sure you're proud of that.
Yes, sir.
So the science indicated it was not less safe, It was not less wholesome. So if you didn't base it on the science, I'm assuming you based it on something else. And listen, because, on this side of the aisle, we get accused of science denial. You're aware of that, I'm sure. I'm sure you listen to the same news programs I listen to. And I'm sure you know that I have been called a science denier. So are you doing a safety and are you a safety and wholesomeness denier because you do the science, prove that the line speed results in equal safety and wholesomeness, decide actually it's so safety and wholesome enough not to make those people running at the higher speed go to a lower speed, but then you decide not to expand that line speed increase anyway, and I'm assuming not based on science. Is that a correct assumption?
That is, though in the final rule, we did say that over time we would analyze the data to see if there were any differences between running 175 and 140, and later on, perhaps looking at that, letting the rest of the plants.
So did you not gather adequate information during the initial pilot probe? Because you did permit some plants to continue at the higher speed.
20.
Right. So there is chicken produced. And when I go to the store, to be honest with you, I doubt it has a label said this was produced at a higher speed or not. So if what we want is transparency to consumers, we want consumer protection, we want safety and wholesomeness, I'm just going to say once again, sounds kind of arbitrary. Sounds like you denied a little science there. And I'll leave it at that's a rhetorical comment. Let me just mention just about catfish, because it was alluded to a little bit, and I'd asked the Secretary when he sat in the middle of the table a couple of weeks ago, because the catfish inspection is very important in my district, because the blue catfish, as you may or may not be aware, is a non-native species to the bay. It is basically eating the bay out of house and home. I mean, it is eating menhaden, it's eating rockfish, eating crabs. I mean, these blue catfish, they're growing pretty big, and to get there, they're devastating some of the ecosystem of the bay. And my concern, and I'll just relate it to you in case the secretaries or the staff hasn't related to you, is that if we throw up impediments, because we have producers who have developed a market for this blue catfish. In the past it was like, this is junk fish, nobody wants to eat it. Now they're actually restaurants ask for it. They've developed a market. They're very afraid that and it sounds like from your testimony and from and I want to thank the FSIS because they've interacted with our office on this, that you're aware that this is critical, that we really have got to make this kind of user friendly, because I don't want to destroy this industry for two reasons. One is it's an industry. The other one is it kills an invasive species. I mean, if we harvest these fish, we're killing an invasive species, allowing some of the other things in the bay to prosper. So, if you might just comment on that, are there any ways you can think of implementing that? If, for instance, one thing came up is this overtime idea. If we have a plant, and a boat comes in with catfish, and it's on the weekend, well, we're going to discourage a processing plant. So I guess the question is, the overtime, these 15 inspectors, because I think you say there are 15 catfish inspectors, are they expected to be just inspecting catfish, or do they do something else in their work weeks?
So the inspectors at the slaughter facilities
Yes.
will be there 8 hours a day. If they have two shifts, they will be there 16 hours
Okay.
a day. But if they work outside the 8 hours, then they're expected to pay overtime for that.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that we have done, and we've talked to several folks about the blue catfish situation, is we want to make it easy. We're not trying to make it more difficult. And so we've discussed some options with them, keeping the fish on ice, things of that nature. As long as they're not adulterated, then we will continue to monitor them just like we do for the other type of catfish.
Thank you very, very much. And I know you worked with them, and they were very worried at first about the idea of they couldn't deliver fish on ice. That would violate it. So thank you very much for working with them. Please, for the sake of the Chesapeake Bay, please allow them to keep harvesting those blue catfish. Thank you.
Yeah, so one of the things we also told them, sir, just so you know, is we would send folks down there kind of to walk through the process with them. Because, again, we don't want to be an impediment. This is new to us. We've never inspected catfish either, so we'll try.
Ms. Pingree.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to talk about beef, get out of chicken and fish for a while. Grass-fed beef. So I understand the way this happened is that the AMS repealed the National Meat Label Claim Standard for grass-fed beef that had been on the books since 2006, and they pointed out that FSIS, not AMS, has primary responsibility for the labeling standards. So I understand that then what happened was FSIS was on a conference call with AMS with all the stakeholders and said that they would not approve any grass-fed label that used the term grass-fed but wasn't 99% or 100% grass-fed, which had been the AMS standard. So I'm hoping this is true, as I think it's really important to protect the integrity. And again, this has become sort of a premium crop for farmers, and there are costs incurred in raising grass-fed beef for a longer period of time. So, and I think this is a particularly important time when consumers don't want to be misled. So can you give me your thoughts on this and perhaps assure me that FSIS will not approve any labels that use the term grass-fed and don't comply with the previous AMS standard? And can you tell me about when you plan to implement that, and will there be a formal ruling or a guidance document?
That is also one of the things that we're just looking to see how the volume, because that's a difficult thing for us to know. Are we getting 10 a year? Are we getting 100 a year? And so that will determine how whether we develop standards, whether we pursue rulemaking. It just depends on that. But we're not changing anything.
Well, you're not changing anything, but are you going to have a grass-fed label standard so it can be used on a product?
So that's what we just need.
That's what you're trying to determine. So currently, you're not changing anything, but it is changed because nothing exists right now because of AMS dropping this. So what you're saying is you're going to look at it, and maybe if there's not enough product, you won't develop a standard?
Well, interest, right? Because is it 10 labels? That's what I was trying to, it's the number of labels that we get in trying to have some verification claims and what the direction that we look at.
Okay. So right now, do you have a budget for this, or are you're just kind of doing it in-house? Is it?
No, I mean, we have a labeling division that handles those types of situations. So just doing the analysis on what that is, we have people that do that.
Got it. So I guess I would say I'm of the opinion that that there's a real interest in grass-fed beef, that it is a growing market. It's a big opportunity for, again, farmers to have a better price for their product, and the consumer is very interested in this. And I see it as one of the responsibilities of the USDA when there's an economic opportunity for an agricultural sector, that they are there to, regulate, enforce, and develop the standards. So I think it would be a real loss if you don't do that. So I'll just say that, that's my opinion, and I think many people share it, and I think it would be too bad. And I think that actually it's a fairly significant growth area, and there is an industry out there, and there's a high level of consumer demand. So it would be too bad if you don't. And I guess I'll certainly, continue to follow this. But what's your sort of time frame for making this decision?
I would say mid-summer, but we will be in touch with you and let you know what comes out of this.
Okay. Well, I'll certainly continue to nag and question you about this, so I'm sure you'll hear from us about it. But I also I think I have a lot of constituents and farmers who are worried that there's going to be sort of a fraudulent product on the marketplace, and they don't, like I said, they don't want to be selling a premium product and not, having the consumer be able to trust it. And I think increasingly consumers are asking that. And I guess my only other question would be sort of what methodology are you using to evaluate this? I mean, do you have a study going on? And what's going to take that amount of time to decide?
Just the volume. We're trying to figure out what the volume or the number of labels that we get with any type of claims are, and what we do with that as regulators. What do we do with 100 labels or 5,000 labels? And obviously, if there is a need and folks are able to demonstrate that the process, whatever it is, a claim, if they're able to have data or documentation that claim is accurate and it can be verified, then it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just, this will be my last question, but, so when you're speaking about volume, you're saying the volume of concerns that people raise, that they're getting a product that says it's grass-fed and it's not? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, well, the number of labels that we get that people want to use grass-fed claims, right? For example, that's one of those claims that it has to be able to be verified.
So your question is how frequently people request to label something as grass-fed
That's
beef?
correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Great, well, I'll stay in touch. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just to repeat, I really would like an answer on the timeline on the salmonella as an adulterant. I think it's important to note in 2015, about 93% of all USDA pounds recalled as a result of contamination were due to salmonella, affecting over 43 million pounds of recalled product. That was 10 times higher than it was in 2014. So I really want an answer to that question. And a quick answer to this question: where are you in finalizing the new ground beef salmonella standards, which were first proposed more than 2 years ago?
So what we're doing is we're developing a package that addresses beef carcasses, trim, and ground beef, maybe a performance standard or guidance to industry since...
When will that occur? That's what my question is. It's been more than 2 years. Where are we in the finalizing?
Yeah, we're developing a package that
I know, I understand that, but what's the end game? What's the time frame?
Well, I can't give you a specific time frame, Congresswoman. It's how can I give you a time frame and not be able to deliver? I mean, I can make something up, but I'm not going to do that.
No, I don't. I certainly don't want you to make something up, but I would certainly believe that the U.S. Department of Agriculture, in both of these cases, would have some idea. It's not a never-ending saga.
Well,
This
I
has
agree.
been 2 years. So just go back and ask if we can get some information as to when this is going to happen.
Okay.
So that we don't have to keep continuing to ask it, like the grass-fed rule here. The other point I just will make very, very quickly is my understanding that, and I do want an answer to my question about the training that these sorters have. Is there a training regime that they have? And if so, I'd like to see that. And who is evaluating the training that they get in order to be able to look on that line? Now, in prior times, the NPIS, that final inspector, is looking at 2.33 birds a second. In the past, we've had 4 inspectors where there were 35 in a minute. So the process has really changed as to how do we deal with safety. I want to know what the training program is for these folks that we have said to the company, you select and put them on the line. I would expect there's a training regime.
Different corporations have different training programs.
Now, I understand also with regard to sorters in Australia and New Zealand that we required them to have some sort of a certificate that they were trained in the proper way.
But those sorters are performing inspection activities. You see, in Australia, those inspectors are incising lymph nodes, but they have a government inspector at the end of the line. So you're talking apples and oranges.
No,
here.
we're not talking apples and
No,
oranges.
we
If
are,
they had
because I've seen
sorters,
them.
why didn't we, and they had to be certified, why aren't our sorters being certified? Because if they're looking at if the person is at the end of the line. You know, this is not a circular argument. This is a tautology here. I'm not going down. Just get me information about training of people. We have taken, in the last budget, you all said that you were removing all of these inspectors. They were out of the budget. You have come back with a new regime, and you can't tell us whether or not they have the same level of training as FSIS trained inspectors are. They have to go through this. Why can't we get an answer?
They don't need the same level. For sorters, company sorters, they do not need the same level of training.
I'm going to move
as
on, Mr.
inspectors.
Chairman, because I think, as you can see, We are not monitoring these efforts for food safety. We're playing fast and loose with food safety in this process. Let's now move to the hemp hog slaughter. A lot of data that's been collected and determining what our approach should be. That was your comment in the testimony. Status of the proposal. What is the status of the proposal for the hemp hog slaughter?
We're still analyzing the data.
Right, okay. Are you a long way off from the from making the determination?
I would say that we're closer to the end than we were when we started, but we still have to look at the risk analysis. And see what the
Okay.
risk
Well,
analysis
you seem to have said two things. One, that we're looking at these things, but also you have implied, you've been on record saying that it was going to be final this month. Is it going to be final this month?
No, it's not.
It's not. Okay. So we have another one of those situations where we have no idea what the result of this process is going to be. I'm going to submit for the record because, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sure you have other questions. I have several other questions if you're going to continue with the...
You know what, we're wrapping up, so go ahead if you've got a couple of questions.
Okay, yeah. I will submit for the record in terms of the hog slaughter about elaborating on the data that's been collected, analyzing it. Will you delay expanding hog hemp until you have thoroughly done so? Where is the proof that the hemp model is more effective? And I would like to get answers to those questions. By the way, on the hog slaughter issue, take a look at November 15th. Big pork versus consumer. Whose side is the USDA on? This is about quality pork in Austin, Minnesota. Hogs being slaughtered that had been improperly stunned. Other incidents were violations of the Humane Slaughter Act. My question is the status of that investigation as well. And maybe we can get an answer as to what the status of that investigation is.
We'll submit that to you.
You do not know now what the status of that investigation is.
The investigation that we did internally, we issued them an NOIE, a Notice of Intended Enforcement. And then, as they were getting ready to come off the Notice of Intended Enforcement, 90 days later, there was another incident in which we suspended them.
Are they suspended now?
No, they're back to work.
They're back to work.
But they're under another Notice of Intended Enforcement.
Oh, I got to tell you. If the American people only knew, Mr. Chairman. We talked about catfish, okay? First of all, as I say, FSIS embarked on a program 4 years ago to freeze the hiring of permanent inspectors in anticipation of implementing the new poultry inspection system. You began to hire temporary inspectors, understanding it was less than successful because it exacerbated staffing shortages in many of the FSIS districts. You're now in the process of implementing NPIS, and you are eliminating permanent inspector slots. At the same time, you are responsible for conducting inspections of catfish, both for domestic and imported product. A majority of the catfish that we consume in this country is imported. Can you show us where in your budget the agency is attempting to accomplish all of this? The inspection staffing needs for domestic catfish processing facilities and at the ports of entry for imported product, and for our facilities here in the United States. On top of this, the ramifications which would be for TPP on FSIS's capacity to deal with an increased volume of imported catfish from countries such as Vietnam and Malaysia. And let me just, U.S. imports, seafood imports, and food safety. U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention found that imported fish were the most common source of foodborne illness from imported food from 2005 to 2010. In 2013, 100% of Vietnamese catfish farms used antibiotics not approved in the United States. U.S. scientists found that 44% of catfish and related species from China, from Vietnam, from Thailand, from Indonesia, and Cambodia. Cambodia tested positive for an antibiotic banned in the United States. Tell us about your inspection capacity to deal with this product coming in and what you're going to do about all of this.
Sure, we're ready for the challenge. We know it's a challenge, and we have the personnel to be able to do it with.
How you have the personnel on record to deal with this when we today inspect almost less than 1% of foreign product coming into the United States.
Well, that's a different type of inspection that,
Yeah,
that those
that's
folks
right.
are doing, right?
But so you go on record telling us that you have all of the inspection capacity that you need to deal with what is going to come in from Vietnam, Malaysia, who are signatories to TPP.
As we move through the implementation of MPAS, we'll just reallocate our inspection.
And my last question on this is, how are you determining the equivalency of a Vietnam and a Malaysia, given that 100% of their catfish farms have determined that they're contaminated and using products that are banned in the United States? What is your equivalency determination? Yeah.
So we're going to go over there. In fact, we have a team in Vietnam as we speak, and they're educating them about our equivalency process. I was just over there 3 weeks ago and talked to their government officials about that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Almanza, for being here and for the testimony this afternoon. And also, Mr. Durford, congratulations on your retirement. And we wish you the best in the next chapter of your life. And with that, the hearing will be adjourned.